Hello, listeners. Welcome to the very first episode of Lex Get Loud, a podcast where every episode will tackle a legal topic that is relevant in the Philippines. For this episode, we will talk about taxing influencers. But before any of that, if I sound excited, that's because I am. And because not only is this the very first episode of Lex Get Loud, but this is also the first podcast that is produced by the University of Cebu School of Law through the UC Legal Aid Office. Now, before we talk about taxing influencers, let us introduce ourselves first. I am JB, your forever baby, and your host for this episode.
So, hi everyone, I'm Janet Don, and I'm Don for you.
Hi, I'm Mel, the working student mommy.
Hi guys, I'm Doreen. I'm here to chase my dream.
Hi guys, I'm Miggy, the Don of the group, and the bossiest one too.
And hey guys, finally I'm Mickey. I'm so fine, I blow your mind. I'm Mickey. Back to you, Jabes.
Thank you, everyone, for your exhilarating and very entertaining introductions. But Mickey, I have to ask you, why did we land on the name Lex Get Loud?
It's such a great question, Jabes, and such an honor that you asked me. It's actually a very good play on words. It's coming from the song of Jennifer Lopez, Let's Get Loud, but we want to make it like sounding a bit law-ish, so we turned it to Lex Get Loud. So why is it significant? Why did we choose Lex Get Loud? Well, if you think about it, it says Let's Get Loud. We want a world, we envision a country, we envision people who are loud about their rights, and we want to give back to the community because after all, I think everyone here would agree that the practice of law essentially is about advocacies. It's about public service. So what better way to do it right than to get loud about our rights and give back to our own community?
That's right. So, are you excited? Who else is excited to
I'm
be...
excited.
I'm excited.
Me, I'm excited.
Yes. Because we are actually making history today because this is the first podcast that is produced by UC School of Law. And if this gains traction, this could exist in the next 5 years, maybe even in the next 10 years. And then we'll all remember this episode as being the first one. How does that make you feel, Jades?
I'm so excited because, we don't usually do these things in law school. We're always reading and studying. And then now we get to do something fun, something creative. So it's exciting, especially since our guest is so, he's so good at discussing topics and like, it's not boring if he's the one talking.
That's very true. We're gonna introduce our guest later, but like you said, it feels very weird doing a podcast when for the past 4 years in law school, we have been used to the grinding, the cramming for exams. And then I was kind of surprised that Attorney Mangito chose this group to do the first episode.
It fits.
Because it really fits. All of us are so talkative, and yeah, it's really a match made in heaven, I think. What do you think, Miggy?
Oh, when Attorney Mangito was picking the groups for our clinical legal education class, I think all of us would agree that this was the one that we all wanted, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Like
True.
it would be a good avenue for us to let out our creative side because we've been itching for that for like 4 years now.
And also, in law school, not everyone gets to shine academically. I'm speaking for
Yes.
myself. Like,
Yes.
if I get called for recits, and then usually I'm really bad at recits, or if something is expected from me right away, I'm the type to malfunction. So because of that pressure, there's always a big chance for me to say something stupid. But of course, it's different if it's in a casual environment or if it's things that don't matter, then I can go on for hours. So thank you again, Attorney Mangito, for giving us this assignment. Today, we're gonna be talking about taxing social media influencers because it's very relevant because of what happened with Jamil deleting their YouTube account because they wanted to avoid paying their taxes. I just want to ask you guys, what's your take on being an influencer? Let's ask Mickey.
Honestly, James, my take on that, I feel like a lot of the influencers right now, they have that guts that I wish I had, because I'm so awkward when it comes to anything that shows my face. That's why a lot of the people here know I barely post anything online. I barely post any stories, but I love watching these people. So I hope I have the same confidence as they do. Or I hope I have the same confidence as JB does.
I honestly don't know what confidence you're talking about. Maybe you're mistaking it for clownery. Anyway, Mel, how about you? What's your take on influencers?
I think when you're an influencer, you need to be careful on what you post because it influences not only those people that sees it, but also the children. So it will impact on how they will think about themselves, and also just what I've learned when I was young. Be careful what you think because your thoughts will shape your life. So I think the influencers will always be very careful on the content that they will post. That's all, JB.
Thank you for that, Mel. Yeah, what you said is very true. That social media influencers nowadays have to be very careful and they need to know what they're getting themselves into. The problem is, a lot of influencers nowadays are very young, and quite a number of them had their start during the pandemic. Some people might look into Bella Porch as an example on how to convert your boredom into something worthwhile. And because there's so much free time during the pandemic, everyone's thinking the same way. I remember when quarantine period just started, a lot of my friends started streaming on Facebook for some reason. I don't know if we have the same experience with our friends starting to stream.
Yep.
And TikTok being like normal now.
Yeah,
Not that it wasn't
TikTok-
normal before, but it was like embarrassing. But everyone like suddenly had the courage to post videos of themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. TikTok suddenly became this big deal. No longer the, oh my gosh, that's so cringy that you're on TikTok.
Yeah, already household name.
Yeah, it just goes to show that this pandemic really brought out the creative juices in a lot of people. But like I said, most people who decide to become influencers or who decide to become content creators don't really know what they're getting themselves into, because once they go big, remember, they only started because they were doing it for fun. But when you start to get income out of what you're doing, there will come a point when you're gonna be taxed by the government. That is why this topic is so important to talk about today. And our guest, like JD mentioned, is really the perfect guest to talk about this issue. Because unlike the tax experts, I'm saying that with air quotes, the tax experts on Facebook and Twitter, he is literally a tax god. The way he talks about tax concepts will be able to make the average person understand, even if tax as a subject is already a very difficult topic to grasp. Don't you agree, Doris?
That's true, James. Actually, I can't imagine myself understanding tax concepts by myself. I think UC really hit the jackpot, keeping him, and the students are really honored to learn from this speaker. So people should stay tuned. I'm pretty sure that many of you will learn from this tax god.
You know what, Doris? They don't need to stay tuned because we're actually gonna transition to the interview right now. Just a disclaimer for our listeners, please remember that we are not podcasting professionals, and please take note that the person that we are interviewing today is literally our professor for tax review. So there might be some moments where we're stuttering like crazy. So we're hoping that you bear that in mind when you're listening. Again, this is Lex Get Loud about taxing influencers. Let's begin and let's get loud. Our esteemed guest for tonight is a Juris Doctor graduate from the University of Cebu, class of 2012, graduating as the cum laude of his class. He is a member of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines Cebu chapter and the Philippine Institute of Certified Public Accountants. Our guest for tonight is no other than Attorney Stephen L. Yu. So, before anything else, Attorney, thank you so much for freeing freeing up your extremely busy schedule to make time for the very first episode of not only this Lex Get Loud podcast, but this is actually the very first episode of a podcast that is produced by University of Cebu School of Law. So, Attorney Yu, how are you today?
Yeah, first of all, good afternoon, no? Good afternoon, Mr. Alganza, and also good afternoon to everyone, no? Thank you also for inviting me, no, in this particular podcast, no, yung Let's Get Loud podcast. So it's also an honor for me, no, to be the speaker, no, for this episode, no. So yeah, I'm good, no, I'm good. So congratulations also, no, to the team, no, for coming up with this innovative, no, episode.
Thank you again, Attorney, for being with us here today. We said this during the launch, but there was really no better option than you. But I also want to ask, again, for the benefit of our listeners, Attorney Yu is actually our current professor for our tax review class. Every week before we start our class, Attorney Yu actually posts an audio lecture that we have to listen to before we enter class. So, Attorney, I just want to ask, is it safe to assume that you're already used to podcasting by now, considering that you regularly record audio lectures for our tax class?
It's not really used to, no, but probably some experiences with podcasts, but still, I'm still nervous, no, even up to now, no, but yeah, considering that I need to record certain lectures, no, audio lectures for the class, no, so I have to be prepared also, no, with the recordings, no, so I hope everyone also, I hope my students would be able to learn also, or also learn, no, with the recordings that I uploaded in the class, no?
That's true, Attorney Kay. Because your audio lectures are actually very helpful to all of us, and it's very useful listening to your audio lecture as well as reading the topics at the same time. But before we get really into the meat of the issue, we would like to get to know you a bit better, Attorney, like as a person. You've been teaching tax in UC for quite a while now. During the launch, Attorney Miguito even mentioned that you were his tax professor, and he could not understand tax until you came along. You're also a CPA. So we just want to ask, when you were still a teenager before you entered college, did you always want to become a lawyer? Was that always a dream, or did you always want to become an accountant?
It was not really a plan, no. Specifically being a lawyer, no, it was not part of the plan, no. Maybe for an accountant, because probably in high school, around fourth year high school, accountancy, no, was one of the courses that I really wanted to take, no, for college, no. But I never really imagined myself becoming a lawyer, no, at that time. So probably it was just around maybe after I passed the certified public accountant licensure examination, no, when probably I decided to really pursue law studies. But I did not immediately enroll, no, in law school right after I passed the CPA licensure examination, because I still work with an auditing firm for probably 2 years, I think 2 years, no, before I started law school. So, and I think looking back, no, it's probably an advantage, no, if you have a work experience first, no, before you start with law school, because you would have the necessary training, siguro, no, especially with time management, no, before you enter law school. Because if you enter law school right away without going through the work, no, or work experiences, although I'm not saying it's not good, no, but maybe there's an advantage if you have prior work experience, no, before you enter law school. So that was the time, no, that I really decided to study law, and later on, I was fortunate, no, that I successfully passed the bar exam and ultimately became a lawyer.
I just wanted to ask that question, Attorney, because this generation of teenagers there's been a shift in the occupations that they want to do. Recently, the teenagers now, or the current generation, Generation Z, there's been data that they would prefer to become content creators like vloggers, influencers, YouTubers. So there's been this shift compared to previous generations, Attorney. For you and the previous generation, everyone wanted to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, and that's so different compared to now when the kids these days, I sound so old when I say that, but the kids these days, they just they wanna make content. And I'm not saying that being a content creator is an easy occupation, because it isn't. Even I myself tried to create a YouTube channel. I also have a TikTok page, and there are certain elements of content creation that is just as difficult, like figuring out the algorithm so your content will be spread to people around the world. It's really not easy, but I guess what I'm trying to say is, compared to an occupation like a lawyer and a doctor, the path to getting there is not as much of a grind. And the reason why I'm saying that, because this is also a transition to the reason why we're here today. So Doreen, do you know how this taxing social media influencers became that big of an issue? Taking into consideration what goes viral in the Philippines, taxing social media influencers seems to be a bit unusual compared to the usual issues that go viral in this country. So Doris, for the benefit of our listeners who don't have an idea or who have no idea that this is even an issue, why are we talking about this now? Social media influencers have always been here and on the spotlight. So why is this issue coming into light just now?
Hello, good afternoon, Attorney. So, Attorney, let me know if you have your own podcast. We will subscribe immediately. So, I'll be talking about how it started. So, everyone's been so engrossed with Facebook nowadays. So, every single issue easily perpetuates all over the country, especially since the Filipinos now are there's what we call Filipino baiting. So, Filipinos being the number one audience, the number one audience that could give these bloggers money, because there are a lot of viewers that you can get from Filipinos. So how it started, Attorney, one morning, the tweet of Camille Trinidad. Camille Trinidad is the girlfriend of Jaiza Manabat. This couple is a blogger couple, number 4 in the Philippines, earning more than 12 million pesos. And also, they garner a lot of money using vlogging. So first, they would vlog about their daily life, and then they would vlog about pranks, until it garnered a lot of viewers. They became number 4, and they earned billions and millions a year. They were able to put up even their own milk tea shop, their own clothing shop. And one of the most famous is their property, their house, a really huge house that came from their earnings in YouTube. So this Jamil one day tweeted that they're about to close their YouTube channel that has given them a lot of money since 2017. So people looked into the reason why they closed it, and they concluded that it was because they were trying to evade taxes. Since the BIR Deputy Commissioner announced one morning that they will be going after social media influencers. So in light of that, everyone became so invested in this issue, whether or not social media influencers can be taxed. And is the closing of the YouTube channel of Jamil really an act or a way to escape taxes? So that's the issue. The second issue is from Cian Gaza. Unfortunately, Cian Gaza, he's a convicted scammer. I don't know if you know him, Attorney, but he's very famous now, even putting up billboards to ask Erich out. So one of his antics, again, he changed his name. He changed his name into something and anonymously asked an unmentioned lawyer. And that lawyer apparently said that the BIR is just acting out, that they cannot actually go after social media influencers for tax evasion, especially if it's the past 2 years. So the question is, attorney, what the people want to know is, number one, is the closing of a YouTube channel an act of escaping taxes? And second is the most important question that this lawyer did not answer, Cian Gaza's lawyer did not answer. Will the memorandum circular that just came out cover retroactively those influencers for the last 2 years? So that's one of the main questions now. And lastly, what's your opinion, attorney? Is it really BIR's antics? Are they just really scaring people to pay their taxes? And can they really go after these social media influencers?
Okay, so can I answer the question?
Yes, attorney.
Let me answer first the second question. No? I'll go back to the first question later. No? Regarding the second question, whether the BIR can go after the social media influencers for regarding their source of income for the last 2 years. No? The answer to that is definitely yes. No? So these social media influencers or vloggers, they have earned the income for probably 2 years would not be enough. It could even be more than 2 years. So definitely the income has already been earned. Okay. Now the question now would be, are they paying taxes, or were taxes paid on those income earned last year, 2 years ago, or several years ago? Diba? Then another question there would be, are these persons, social media influencers, vloggers, and the like, are they registered with the Bureau of Internal Revenue, or BIR? So it seems that the particular issuance made by the BIR, which is actually Revenue Memorandum Circular number 97-2021, is actually a clarification. Okay, a clarification made by the BIR, stating among others that these personalities, the social media influencers, the vloggers, and the like, they are covered by our taxation laws, and it's just a clarification from the BIR that these people are mandated by law to register with the BIR, and consequently, they're also required to file income tax returns and other related tax returns, and also pay taxes. Okay, so it's not actually a new tax being imposed, because that is something that is actually a wrong impression, among the people, In fact, Ms. Doreen Labay mentioned earlier about this person named Cian Gaza, I do not know him personally, I'm not even a follower, whatever. But there was one post, I think the one that you mentioned, which I saw, the post, wherein it was mentioned that since this is something which is new, a new tax imposition, so it would not apply retroactively. I think that something like that. It was mentioned there, but it's not actually correct to say, that this is a new tax imposition or this is a new law imposing new taxes, So no, it has been there, meaning income tax has been there even before the trend, or even this social media influencing or vlogging or ever TikTok na started, So it has been there, It is just that the group of persons, these social media influencers, vloggers, they have not been captured, so to speak, by the tax system. There are challenges, right there, in the way that the taxes would be collected, from these people. But it's not actually a new tax. That is not something new. It has been there, so it's already there, under the National Internal Revenue Code, So it is just that the BIR is going after these personalities, for the payment of taxes, and also the registration with the BIR. So to answer the second question earlier, yes, the BIR can go after the income no, derived by these personalities, no, not only limited to the 2-year period, but even way back, no, even prior to those, prior to 2019. So if they have been in that practice, no, then they are liable to pay the necessary taxes, no. So it's not something new; it has been there. So they are required to comply with the registration requirement, with the filing of tax returns, and the payment of taxes. Okay. Now going back to the first question, will the closing or shutting down of the YouTube account of these persons, no, be considered as an act of escaping, no, from the payment of taxation? Now, not necessarily, because they may have the reasons, no, and it's very easy for them to find an explanation for the shutting down or the closing of their account, no. But it's not really a way of escaping, because even whether they would close their account or whether the account would still remain, no, the BIR can still go after them, no. So it will not matter, no, if your YouTube account would already be closed or would still be active. It will not matter, because the fact that these personalities, these social media influencers, no, vloggers, already derive the income, no, from these activities, no. In fact, it's mentioned in the RMC, no, in the RMC 97-2021, no, issued by the BIR. There are a lot of ways, no, wherein these personalities would be able to derive, no, their income, no. So they are still liable to pay whatever taxes that are due from them, no, based on the income that they derive from the activities, no. So the BIR can go after them way back even 2 years or 3 years ago, no? So again, to reiterate, no, it's not something new, no, it's not an imposition of a new tax. So it cannot be argued that since it's a new imposition, then it would only apply prospectively. No, it would not be that way, no? Because the fact that they already earned income from these activities, then they are liable to pay taxes, no. So it's wrong to say, that or it's not even a good strategy, to close your account just to say that, okay, I'm not already engaged in that activity, then I would no longer be required to pay the tax. No, because the mere fact that you already derive the income, no. In fact, there were news reports that some of these personalities were able to purchase luxury cars, no, even other properties, no. So that would even be an evidence, no, that or proof that they really earned a substantial amount of income, no. And I'm sure all of you here are law students, no. So that the BIR can utilize, no, what we call as the net worth method, no. So they would just look at the net worth, meaning the assets less the liabilities of these individuals, no. So if based on record, these personalities have registered properties like condominium units, cars, diba, amounting to millions of pesos. So this would mean that they really have, or they have accumulated wealth all over these years, no. And if it would be compared with their income derived, no, and reported, assuming they are also registered with the BIR, then if there would be discrepancies, then the BIR can really go after them. So it's really this issue, no, is really very relevant nowadays, no. But unfortunately for these personalities, they are subject to not only the income tax but business tax, no. Like it could be value added tax or the percentage tax, no, based on the income that they derive.
Thank you for that, Attorney. But before, I'm sure Doreen has follow-up questions with what you just said. But before the follow-up questions, I'm just curious, Attorney, considering that you mentioned that this isn't a new imposition. So I'm curious if you're surprised that this issue became viral. Do you think it blew up because one of the biggest influencers, this couple, is the center of it all? Or did this issue exist for a long time, even before it blew up on social media?
I'm not really surprised, no, by by this issue, being or it went viral. No? I'm not surprised by that fact. No, like, it went viral because it has been there. No, in fact, last year there was also an issue about online sellers. No, in fact, more or less similar situation about online sellers because, as we all know, no, because of this global pandemic, a lot of people went into online selling. No, so. The BIR also responded by issuing also another circular which actually reminded online sellers that they are required to register with the BIR and pay the corresponding taxes. So the BIR has been there to monitor these events. But probably it went viral because of as what Ms. Doreen Labay mentioned earlier, the postings made by the couple, and plus the other one, Cian Garza, about the, I don't know if that lawyer, that unnamed lawyer, is a real person or it's just something created, fictional. So, and because of the statements made there, like I think there was a mention about ex post facto law, meaning it's a violation, meaning BIR cannot go after them or cannot go after the income derived prior to 2021 because it would violate ex post facto law. But I'm sure law students would know this one, that ex post facto law has nothing to do with imposition of taxes because ex post facto law is related to criminal liabilities, meaning it's something that you would impose or you would apply, meaning criminal laws would be applied retroactively. So that is not something that is applicable. So for tax, in fact, as what I mentioned earlier, the mere fact that these personalities, vloggers, social media influencers already derive income from these activities. So that is something that they are obliged to pay yung taxes. So I'm not really surprised by that issue. So the BIR has been monitoring. The only problem there is that the enforcement. So it might be a challenge for the BIR to enforce the collection of the tax. Considering that number one, most of these personalities would appear only online. So we do not know if most of them are in the Philippines or they're abroad. But definitely they have tax liabilities.
Thank you, Attorney. So we'll now go to the follow-up questions. I'm sure Doreen is itching to ask these questions to you. Doris?
Attorney, I have a question. Okay, so Attorney, you mentioned earlier that they can go after even before the 2 years. So more than 2 years ago, they could still go after them. So taxes are supposed to be filed annually. What are the consequences of social media influencers who failed to file their taxes or who failed to register even prior to that date, since taxes are supposed to be paid annually? And also, what would happen to them in case they declare their income of 2 years ago or 3 years ago, if ever?
Okay. Supposedly or ideally, they should have filed their tax returns, in the same period that they derive the income. So, for example, if you derive the income in 2019, then you should have filed the tax returns in for 2019 and paid the corresponding taxes. But it's already 2021, this year, so it's possible that some of these social media influencers or vloggers have not even registered with the BIR. So what would happen to their filings? So it's possible that the BIR would issue a subsequent circular, which would give them the opportunity to register, to come out in the open and register with the BIR and give them the opportunity to declare whatever unreported income related to prior years, and they would be exempted from the imposition of penalties. That's possible because it already happened to online sellers. So as what I mentioned earlier, last year the BIR issued a circular which reminded online sellers of their responsibility to register with the BIR and file tax returns and pay the corresponding taxes. So in that circular, the BIR mentioned that as long as these online sellers would register and file their tax returns and pay the taxes within this period, then they would be exempt from the imposition of penalties. So they just pay the basic tax. So it's possible that the BIR would also apply that same rule to social media influencers, bloggers and the like. So that's a possibility. But without that, then to answer your question, definitely there would be penalties to be imposed. So meaning whether it would be voluntary in nature on the part of the social media influencers, or it would be on the part of the BIR, they would be the one who would audit the social media influencers. So there would, in addition to the basic amount of the tax, there would be penalties to be imposed. So for the benefit of our listeners, the penalties would be surcharge, interest, and compromise penalty. Now, the surcharge would be 25%, as a general rule, But if the BIR would find out that there's actually fraud involved, so it would be 50%, surcharge, Now, for interest, it would be 12% per year, That is starting January 1, 2018. But if the BIR would go after the income derived by these social media influencers before 2018, then the interest would be 20% per year. So the amount of the penalty is quite huge. So that's why it would be an advantage if the BIR would apply the same rules that they issued or that they applied to online sellers. So that would be a possibility. But take note that it's just civil in nature. Now, the BIR may also file a criminal case for tax evasion against the social media influencers. Now, under the law, the BIR may go after or may file a tax evasion case, and it would be enough for the BIR to build up or to establish a tax evasion case if they can allege or show proof that there is an under-declaration of more than 30%, meaning under-declaration of the actual income of more than 30%. There's a presumed fraud there, although the taxpayer may be able to rebut that presumption, but as far as the BIR is concerned, it would be sufficient for them to file a tax evasion case if they can allege that, or if they can prove that there's under-declaration of the income by more than 30%. Okay, so this would really apply, especially if these social media influencers have not even declared any income. So if they declared zero income, then it's enough for the BIR to say, okay, based on our investigation or audit, we estimated your annual sales to be, let's just say, 2 million pesos, okay, in 1 year. Okay, that would be enough, because 2 million versus zero, that's definitely more than 30%. So that would be enough, enough for the BIR to file a tax evasion case against the taxpayer or the social media influencer. So again, a civil liability is just a collection of the tax plus penalties, or it could go criminal in nature, meaning the filing of a tax evasion case against the taxpayer. Now, ordinarily, if this would have been a business establishment with physical store, another remedy of the BIR would be to close the business establishment. But I think this would not be applicable to social media influencers because it's digital in nature. So, and I don't think the BIR can also ask YouTube to, or whatever is the platform, to shut down the account. I think that's not a remedy of the BIR. But the filing of the tax evasion case would be possible. And even if these social media influencers are not registered with the BIR can still go after them. So it's not an excuse, oops, the BIR cannot go after me or my other fellow social media influencers because we're not even registered with the BIR. So that's not an excuse. No? So the BIR can go after any person who they think did not properly declare, no, or report their income or sales and did not properly pay the corresponding taxes.
Good afternoon, attorney. While you were talking about the liability of these social media influencers, attorney, but I was reminded of a very interesting question that was asked in our Google form, because we didn't just introduce it to our classmates but also to our friends and family. And there was this one question, attorney, na why is the liability daw on these social media influencers and why not on YouTube, on the YouTube platform? Because in their logic, attorney, according to some, if you think about it, for example, employees, it's their employers that has the burden to pay these taxes kuno daw, and not the employee themselves. And so they're wondering, shouldn't it be the platform daw who should have the liability to pay these taxes and not the social media influencers themselves?
Yeah, that's a good question. No? That's a good question because actually the platform itself, no, even YouTube, no, they might also have a tax liability. But the only challenge there on the part of the BIR is to establish, no, that these companies, no, operating these platforms are within their jurisdiction. So actually, YouTube and the other digital platforms, they might also have tax liabilities, no, because they themselves also derive income, no, from advertisements or sponsorships, no. But it's also a different story with respect to these social media influencers because I understand they have different sources of income, no. So meaning depending on the number of views or subscriptions, no. So there's a corresponding amount that they would receive, no. So it's actually proper for the BIR to go after them, no, meaning the social media influencers, because they are the income earners here, no? And we cannot use as an analogy, no, the employer-employee setup because these social media influencers are not employees of YouTube, for example, no, or the other digital platforms. So it's not the responsibility of these digital platform companies to withhold taxes and remit the same to the BIR because the setup is not employer-employee relationship. So it's actually a responsibility, an obligation of these social media influencers to, number one, register first, no, with the BIR, then number two, file the corresponding tax returns, and number three, pay the taxes, no, because they are the income earners, no. So it is a basic principle that whoever derives or earns the income is the one who is personally liable to pay the tax, and they cannot pass on that obligation to other persons.
Attorney, since we're already talking about YouTube, attorney, there are a lot of young YouTubers, attorney, who are making millions already. They're like under 18 years old. So how does that work, attorney? Are they taxable the same way, even though they're not of age yet?
Yes, even minors, no, as long as they derive income, they are liable to pay taxes, no. Now, the only difference there is that the obligation there to file the tax returns or the payment of the taxes will be done by the guardians, no, parents or whoever is the designated guardian, no? So just like the child actors and actresses, no, so they derive income from their talent fees, no. So these child actors and actresses are already required, no, to pay taxes. So it's not an issue that they're still minors, so they're not, or they're exempt from paying taxes. No, the fact that they earn or derive income, they are liable to pay taxes. But it's just that the filing of the tax returns and the payment of the taxes would be done by their parents or the duly appointed guardians.
And I have a follow-up to that, attorney. So if the parents didn't file the tax returns, who would be liable for the tax evasion if the BRR would want to file a tax evasion case on that income? Would it be the parents?
Yes, it would be the parents, no? Assuming at the time of filing the case, the taxpayer who derived the income is still a minor, but assuming he would already be of legal age, then a case can also be filed against that person.
So, attorney, in regards to that, a lot of people started their social media career now in the pandemic since, they have nothing to do. So my question is the BIR only going after the top social media influencers, or small content creators also liable, attorney?
There was a bit of choppiness there, so for the benefit of our listeners, JD asked if the BIR is only going after the top social media influencers, or are small creators also liable?
The BIR is going after everyone who is utilizing or using digital platforms. Now, in fact, when you look at that circular issued by the BIR, I think they mentioned their social media influencers, content creators, and I think even bloggers. So practically everyone, especially those who are visible on social media. So they're not selecting any specific class of online or social or content creators, but it applies to everyone. So it's not limited only to social media influencers. So it would apply even to content creators.
Hi, attorney. I would just like to ask if are there specific allowable deductions for these social media influencers, attorney, or the allowable deductions under the tax code is the same with those other taxpayers?
The same, meaning if you are a social media influencer or vlogger or content creator, you are considered a self-employed individual taxpayer. So meaning your tax compliance obligation would be the same as that of a businessman and also a person deriving income from the exercise of profession. So meaning whatever income you derive, you declare that as part of your gross income. Then you can claim deductions. So you can have the itemized deductions. You can also opt to claim the optional standard deductions. And I think it would be more advantageous for social media influencers, content creators, and bloggers to avail of the OSD or the optional standard deduction, because I cannot imagine this group of taxpayers to have a lot of expenses or costs and expenses that they can claim. So probably the 40% OSD would be more advantageous to them. So yes, they can claim deductions. So they will have to compute their taxable income. Then the corresponding income tax rates would be applied based on the taxable income. So practically the tax computation would be the same as that of an individual taxpayer who is engaged in business, or an individual taxpayer who is deriving income related to his or her exercise of profession. Now, in addition to income tax, these social media influencers, bloggers, and the like, they're also required to pay either value-added tax, the 12% VAT, or the 3% percentage tax. Or right now, since we are now 2021 under this newly enacted CREATE law, it's now 1%. So that is still part of their tax obligation to pay either VAT or percentage tax plus the income tax. Now, these social media influencers, bloggers, and content creators, they may also avail of the optional 8% income tax. I'm sure law students are familiar with this one, the optional 8% income tax. So they can also avail of this, or they can also opt to be subjected to this optional 8% income tax. And to add also, it should also be noted that if we look at the schedular tax rates that are applicable to individual taxpayers, you would note there that if the taxpayer's taxable income during the year would not exceed 250,000 pesos, then they are exempt from income tax. So they are not required to pay any tax if it would not exceed 250,000. So just an advice to social media influencers, bloggers, content creators, and the like. Do not be afraid to register. Because actually that's step one. Register with the BIR. Because it's not an excuse that okay, I only derive a total income during the year of 100,000 pesos. So it's below 250,000. So I'm exempt. So I don't need to register. No, that's wrong. No, because the fact that you derive income, okay, you're already required to register with the BIR. Okay. Now, registration with the BIR is different from paying taxes, no? Because you might be registered with the BIR, but if you qualify for tax exemption, then you are not required to pay any tax. Okay, so again, it's not an excuse, no, that you only derive a very minimal amount of income, then you no longer register with the BIR. You are still required to register, but it's a different story if whether you are required to pay taxes or not. No, so that's one. No, then I think number two would be it's very unfair actually if these social media influencers, bloggers, and content creators and the like, no, if they would not pay taxes, no, because even the other, for example, employees, no, let me cite as an example, employees, no, employees are, or they are of a different situation, no, compared to individual taxpayers deriving business income and professional income, because as far as employees are concerned, the taxes are withheld, no, every payroll period. Okay, so there is less opportunity for employees to escape, no, the payment of taxes because of the withholding tax system, meaning every payroll period a certain amount is already withheld, no, by your employer, which would now be considered as your advanced tax payment. Now, so it's very unfair, no, if these social media influencers are deriving substantial amount of income and yet they do not contribute, no, to the tax collections, no, of the government, while these employees who are, in fact, some of them are just deriving income just about a little bit above the minimum wage, no, and yet fair, no, that the BIR would really require, no, this group of taxpayers to come out in the open, register, and pay the necessary taxes.
I think Doreen has a final question from our forum, attorney.
I know a question, attorney. So this is for the benefit of all social media influencers and social media influencers wannabes who are listening, especially to my friends here. We have friends here who wants to become full-time social media influencers. What advice, attorney, would you give so that they could still keep a huge amount of their earnings and that they don't have to pay too many taxes?
Okay, probably I'll focus on the taxation aspect, no, because on the operation side, on how, or maybe on the side on how they would maintain their presentations or whatever they would post there, they are more competent, not to discuss on, or to, they're more knowledgeable on those areas. No? But as far as taxation is concerned, my advice, no, would be number one, really to register first, no, register with the BIR, and after that, know your tax obligations, no. They might find out later on that if they decide to comply, no, then it might be more comfortable on their part, no, because they would not be hiding anything from the government or from the BIR, no. So I think register first with the BIR, no, then later on, once you're already registered, then know your tax obligations, no, how to compute your taxes, no, so or what are the items to be included, no. Then if ever they are not really familiar with those, then they can also consult, no, their friends or any person, probably their law student friend, no, their friends who are taking up law or already lawyers. They can consult these persons, no, so that they would really know, no, the proper tax compliance procedures, no, because even if they are registered with the BIR, but if the compliance would not be that perfect, no, then they would still encounter problems, no, later on. So register, then be honest, no, with your declarations, no. Although I'm not going to discuss here the tax evasion ways, no, because that's not allowed, no. But probably the best that I can advise would be knowledgeable, no, with your, or you should be familiar with your tax obligations. So what would be the amount of income that you need to declare, no, and what are the possible deductions that you can claim, no. Probably it's more on the deduction side, no, because some would just say that whatever they earn, whatever's the amount, that would be the amount that would be subject to tax. No, it's not actually correct, because you have certain deductions that can be claimed, no, certain expense items that can be claimed as deductions. So probably they can focus more on those aspects, no? And of course, the filing of tax returns would also be important.
Thank you for that, Attorney. Actually, we prepared so many questions, but your initial answer to Doreen's first few questions, Attorney, actually already answered almost all the follow-up questions that we prepared. So this just highlights your passion as well as your expertise regarding this topic, because when this issue initially blew up online, like I said before, tax issues aren't really the usual issues that go viral in the Philippines. But when this blew up, I'm not sure about Facebook since I don't open it that much anymore, but I can only imagine. But on Twitter, almost everyone on my timeline became a tax expert. They really had something to say about this issue. So it's really good that we finally have a tax expert here to talk about this topic, so that people who are not that familiar with legal concepts and general taxation concepts, even the average person can at least understand why this is an issue and what's happening. So before I end this interview, I just want to thank you again for enlightening us as well as the listeners, because for sure we have learned a lot in this interview. Thank you for being part of history as the first ever guest of Lex Get Loud. But as a closing remark, Attorney, final question na jud. What's one thing you would want the listeners to remember when this podcast ends?
Probably because of the abundance of information right now, no, because of the technology and probably the different digital platforms, no. So it's already a challenge, no, to determine which ones are accurate, which ones are not, no. So probably I want the listeners to be careful, no, on the information that they hear or that they read somewhere, no. So probably they have to be mindful also, or they have to be probably to know, no, which ones are correct, which ones are not, no. Because just like our topic today, no, there are a lot of what we call as fake news, no, related to the topic. So I think it's better for everyone to verify, no, verify the information that they receive, which ones are correct, no, and not react right away, no, or comment right away. So just be careful, no, with anything that you do, especially on social media, no. So because of a lot of information, no, we receive or we read a lot of information right now. So not all of those information are accurate, no? So I want the listeners or the viewers not to know, no, that they have to verify first. So fact checking, no, so to speak.
Thank you so much again for being here with us, Attorney. And there you have it. That ends the interview for Lex Get Loud about taxing influencers. Wow, that was our first episode. What a great guest to have for our first interview, don't you think?
So amazing. Like tax is supposed to be like really hard, but he really made it simple. Like anyone can understand it. Like the audience can really get it. he makes it interesting also. So it was really fun. It was really fun to listen.
I think if you're in the field of content creation, if you're a streamer, an influencer, a vlogger, and you come across this episode, I genuinely believe, I'm not just gassing ourselves up because we're the ones who produced this episode, but I genuinely believe that if they listen to this podcast, they would learn a lot of what to do and what not to do. But to all our listeners, whoever you are, I cannot thank you enough for joining us this episode. I hope you learned something that you can take with you forever, and I hope that you enjoyed our little production. I keep mentioning that history is being made with this episode, but you are just as much a part of history as we are. This is it for our group. Next episode will feature a different topic, a different guest, and a different group. But rest assured, you wouldn't want to miss it. See you around, but until next time, Lex Get Loud.